Season 7, episode 373 is loading because Martel Holt apparently was arrested for harassment.
According to Martel Holt, the collision that almost took his life was not an accident. Someone was to blame. He claims that there is much more to the story. It's about betrayal, cover-ups, and a calculated move that almost killed him, not just a wreck. Martel is now asserting that there was a reason for it and that the person responsible was someone who knew his routines. What actually transpired on that pitch black section of road, though? Rewind to the day that everything happened. The afternoon was like any other. Martel drove home from a meeting on a quiet back road that he frequently used. There was no rain or fog, and the roads were clear. The loud crash was reported by witnesses shortly after 3 p.m. However, a few neighbors hurried outside to witness Martel's SUV in a ditch tipping over on its side. The effect was powerful. There was debris all over the road, windows were broken, and the car's front end was totally crushed, as if it had been forced or something suddenly failed. One witness reported seeing the car jerk violently before swerving off the road. Fortunately, Martel was still alive despite being shaken, bruised, and confused when the paramedics arrived. The broken glass had cut his face and arms, and before emergency personnel could free him, his leg had been pinned for a number of minutes. A cracked windshield, blood on the seat, and the inside of the car with airbags deployed were later captured in photos. It was a disarray. Based on the appearance, he was fortunate to be able to leave. The report at the time claimed that it was a single vehicle accident with a potential mechanical cause. People accepted it at face value. Martel posted a brief message expressing gratitude to everyone for their support and prayers, adding that he was simply happy to be alive. Fans showered him with love while avoiding too many inquiries. Martel wasn't persuaded, though. It appeared to be a tragic turn of events at first, but Martel knew something wasn't right. Martel didn't want to make a scene immediately after the crash. He informed his closest friends and family that it was most likely a brake or steering issue.
So according to our friends over at the Neighborhood Talk, they got the actual mugshot and the details. Apparently, he was arrested for domestic violence, third harassing communications. You're probably wondering who. So am I. Is it Melody? Is it Ariane? Or is it someone else? Are we surprised? No, he's exhibited behavior that reminds us of what he's being accused of. This comes just in time when he was claiming, after blasting Carlos King on social media, that maybe he won't be returning for revealing that, a lot of their scenes are pre-produced. It's not completely reality. But now Carlos is not going to let you go, Martel. You're his forever.
The likely cause was mechanical failure, according to a brief statement issued by his team. However, his discomfort with it increased as he gave it more thought. He began to walk backwards. It had recently been serviced. The crash occurred weeks before everything was checked out. No odd noises, no warning lights, and no clue that something was amiss under the hood. He nevertheless attempted to move on and persuade himself that it was simply bad luck. Then something changed, he said. He stated, "I thought it was bad luck until I looked closer." He returned, walked the same route, and stood where his SUV had landed. A couple of things caught Martel's attention and made him wonder. Initially, there were no skid marks, indicating that either the brakes did not apply or he was never given the opportunity to do so. The tire had a deep gash that wasn't there before, which was the second unsettling thing he discovered. When the tire was inspected, it was determined that it might have been cut, perhaps by a sharp object. The skepticism evolved into suspicion at that point. His mind began to relive the day. After that, some details became clear, including who he spoke to, who was aware of his schedule, and who had access to his car. The text message arrived too late, and the conversation felt strange. Of an individual who vanished immediately following the crash. As he looked further, he came to the conclusion that this might not have been an accident at all, even though the pieces didn't initially fit together. When Martel found something that totally turned the story around, everything changed. Finally, after weeks of silent investigation, Martel received answers that supported his suspicion that the car had been tampered with. Martel took the SUV to a private mechanic, someone he trusted off the radar, so he wasn't completely dependent on what he saw with his own eyes. An unsettling discovery was made during the examination. A rear brake line had been purposefully damaged. It was undamaged, rust-free, and unbroken by impact. It was sliced clean, and the tire's gash wasn't caused by any debris from the road. It appeared as though the damage was deliberate, as if it had been weakened to brake under duress. A sharp decline in brake fluid pressure just prior to the collision was detected by the car's onboard system, which is even more concerning. No warnings, no error messages. It all occurred in a matter of seconds. This was accuracy, not a coincidence. Martel took some time to go public. He must have been certain. He engaged a different expert, this time with forensics background. First, the report supported it. The damage to the brake line was not due to normal wear and tear. Small, odd scratches on the undercarriage were another indication that someone might have gotten inside the car while it was parked, possibly from underneath. At that point, everything started to happen. They weren't unlucky. That served as a warning. Was someone trying to scare me, or were they trying to silence me completely? Martel asked himself incessantly. He reflected on all of his activities, including business dealings, TV contracts, and the drama that had been simmering behind the scenes. And he considered the possibility that this was more than just a personal matter. This might have been an attempt to harm or stop him. However, why would anyone target Martel and go this far? Martel had his suspicions, but his first reaction was to avoid making accusations. He began to imagine the tension that was building behind the scenes. Martel had engaged in a contentious legal back and forth for the past 12 months. Business disputes, custody disputes, and the pressure from the reality show were all factors. He'd had disagreements with several of his co-stars. An old friendship went bad. His once trusted people were now his enemies. Although he did not immediately name names, he did drop some strong clues in a recent conversation. Martel mentioned someone in particular whom he referred to as a former partner who had every motive to see him fail. He explained, "They tried to come for my pockets, they tried to take my kids, and when that didn't work, maybe they thought taking me out was the only way left." According to fans, this might be a reference to his ongoing problems with Melody Cherie and the legal drama that followed their split. However, there has been conflict with business partners as well. Just weeks prior to the crash, Martel claims that someone with whom he had previously been in negotiations over a real estate deal abruptly withdrew and then stopped talking. He had previously received warnings from that same individual to back off from certain deals, and he even sent a few texts that Martel later described as intimidatory. The picture became clearer the more he connected the dots. It wasn't a random thing. At the time of the crash, Martel was taking action, starting new projects, taking back control of his brand, and regaining his prominence. He concluded, "You don't realize how many people smile in your face while praying for your downfall until your brakes go out." Regardless of whether he meant that literally or figuratively, the message was obvious. Martel thought that a close friend or relative who had access in the past might have been involved in this arrangement. Furthermore, his recent interviews indicate that he is still uncovering the truth, even though he hasn't filed a lawsuit yet. And even though Martel was struggling with this betrayal, the emotional devastation didn't end with the crash. Acknowledges Martel was physically shaken by the crash. It caused more damage to his relationships and mental health. He acknowledged that he was unable to sleep through the night after the incident because he always jumped at the sound. A hint of paranoia, second-guessing individuals. He felt alienated from even his closest friends and family. His circle dwindled virtually overnight. Martel had emotional problems. He repeatedly relived the crash, the noises, the anxiety, and the sense of powerlessness while driving. According to him, the goal was not only to survive, but also to understand why it occurred. He carried that kind of mental strain with him wherever he went. Martel's statement, "The crash broke parts of my life I thought were unshakable. It broke more than just metal," perfectly captured the essence of the situation. Even in his darkest moments, however, Martel discovered a surprising new purpose and a reason to fight. Though a change occurred as Martel gradually recovered, he came to view the crash as a watershed, a moment that made him stop and think. It dawned on him that he had been surrounded by people who weren't truly on his side and by loud noises. He began implementing changes. Initially, he placed a high value on quiet weekends, family dinners, school runs, and time with his children. Once lost in his daily grind, those moments were now revered. He severed relationships with those he deemed to be energy drainers. In his professional life, Martel made hints about a change in direction. He withdrew from some partnerships and declared his intention to start a project that would focus on mental health and recovery, particularly for men who feel under pressure to maintain their composure. As a result of his personal experience with death, he feels compelled to take this initiative. Additionally, he discussed forgiveness, not forgetting, but letting go of the burden of retaliation. Hate and healing cannot be held in the same hand, Martel stated. One of them needs to leave, and that perspective has altered his perception of the entire event, not as a thing that nearly killed him, but as a wake-up call. Before wrapping up this chapter, though, Martel has one last message for the person he thinks is responsible for everything. "You attempted to shatter me, but instead you gave me purpose," Martel said, staring straight into the camera. "You expected me to keep quiet. I see things clearly now, even though you believe that I would be stopped by fear." He clarified that retaliation is not the goal. It's about justice, truth, and ensuring that this doesn't happen to anyone else again. However, who do you believe did it and why? Share your opinions with me in the comments section. See you in the next one.